everyone, welcome back to my channel, the best place for writers, editors and storytellers. I'm Srishti and in today's video, we'll be discussing the sensitive topic of receiving negative feedback. Now, if you watched my last week's video, which you can do right here, then you would know that receiving negative feedback helps us grow and evolve into better writers, which is a very important habit that I talked about in that video, that you need to accept negative feedback in order to grow as a writer. But having said that, receiving negative feedback can be quite painful and sometimes downright depressing. A few weeks ago in one of my workshops, I received some very critical feedback. By the way, just for context, I'm doing Masters in Creative Writing. So we have these weekly workshops where we submit our work and we receive feedback. And yes, the whole point of it is to grow as a writer. But after this specific workshop, I felt really emotional and depressed. And I admit that I cried when I came back home. I have to say that everyone in my class, my classmates and my professor were very polite, very considerate, and nobody was rude, so that was not the issue. The issue was that I had all of these feelings bottled up inside me while I was receiving that feedback. I felt depressed that I had failed as a writer. I felt embarrassed that people in my class had read this story and they thought it's not good. That's what I thought that they thought. Right? But since then, I've had a lot of time to digest my emotions and I did a lot of research to objectively understand what could be the best process for me to handle future workshops and any negative feedback that comes my way in my writing journey. I've named this strategy the 3D feedback process, which is exactly what I'm going to share with you in this video. So let's dive right into it. The first D in my feedback process would be differentiate between constructive and destructive feedback. I bet you saw that one coming, because it's so simple that it almost borders on common sense. Yet, in that very moment when we are being criticized, we tend to forget this specific fact. We tend to forget about constructive and destructive feedback because we start thinking from our hearts. We take all the feedback directly to our heart and we start feeling emotional. We forget that our heart is not supposed to do the thinking. Our mind is supposed to do the thinking. And so, if you can divert this feedback to your mind, then your mind can help you remind that, hey, there is this thing called constructive and destructive, and you don't need to take all of that. You only need to take the constructive part of that. So this is a trick to not feeling emotional during a feedback session. But wait, Srishti, how do we differentiate between constructive and destructive feedback? How? Good question. But those two terms are so subjective from person to person and so comprehensive that it could take me a whole another video to explain. If you want that video, comment down below and let me know. But for the sake of this video, I'll give you my personal opinion of what constitutes constructive feedback and destructive feedback. Feedback which provides you a significant why of something is constructive. Everything else is destructive by default. For example, if somebody says, hey, this specific character in your story is not relatable because I feel that their background, their backstory is not working enough in order to what you are trying to show on the page. That would be constructive feedback because they are giving you a why. They're not just saying that, hey, this character is not relatable or I don't like this character. That would be destructive because they are not giving you why. So this person who gave you this feedback told you, hey, I feel it's not relatable because certain thing is not working. So when somebody is giving you feedback, notice if they are giving you a because or if they're giving you a cause behind why they feel that something is not working. The second step in our 3D process is detach yourself from your story. Have you ever heard about separating the artist from the art? That's a popular theory among readers and reviewers, and you can learn more about that on Google. But in our feedback process, I want you to separate yourself, the writer, from your story, the piece of work. In simpler words, don't take anything personally. Understand that when someone is critiquing your work, they are not critiquing you. You are different, your work is different. You need to have that distinction in your mind. You need to know that those two are very different, and that is going to help you separate your emotions from objectivity. I know it's easier said than done, but here's a little hack for you all that I am following up. It's a little trick up my sleeve, but let's see if it helps you as well. I call it the deception tip. To use the deception trick, all you need to do is pretend that you're working on somebody else's story. Maybe you're just the editor or manager for the story, and all you have to do in your workshop when you're being criticized, all you need to do is witness it and take the feedback to the author. That's all. This way, you can separate your emotions when you're being critiqued. The third step in our 3D feedback process is distance yourself from your story. Before you ask me the difference between detach and distance, here's a quick vocabulary lesson for you. Detach means not joined together or having little or no emotions towards something, whereas distance refers to the amount of space between 2 points. It's also interchangeably used for a certain length of time. In our feedback process, distancing yourself from the story means leaving your story aside for a few months in order to create this emotional and mental space between you and your story. The reason why I stress on distancing is because the deception tip, the second D of the process, is only going to help you in the short term. You can't keep pretending that you're working on somebody else's work forever, can you? Eventually, you'll have to look at the feedback and implement it in your story. Distancing yourself from your story is going to bring objectivity to the table, and that is exactly what is going to help you implement the constructive feedback to your story and grow into the best writer version of yourself. And that right there was my 3-step process of handling feedback as a writer. Let me know in the comments below which one of the 3Ds was your favorite and why, because why is important. And if you like this video, I highly recommend watching these 2 videos on screen. Alright guys, that is me, Srishti Rathore, signing off. See you in the next video. Until then, happy writing and bye-bye.